Welcome back to Corner Stories. Please enjoy this video and don't forget to give it a like and subscribe. And now let's get on to story 1. My sister found this video on my mom's laptop. I think she was using her laptop for some school stuff and she must have gone snooping through her personal files. She found this video. It's from a few years ago according to the date of the file. It's definitely our mom in the video, and it looks to be in some hotel room. There's definitely a man in the video, but he's holding the camera and we don't see his face or hear his voice. I don't want to go into any detail, but it's basically a striptease sex tape filmed by the man, so while our mom is clearly identifiable, I can't tell exactly who the man is. I first got angry at my sister for showing it to me. I told her this is gross, I don't want to see that. She told me she thinks it could mean our mom is cheating on our dad and we should at least present the information to our dad. I told her it's very likely it's him in the photo. You can see the man's hands in a few shots. I think it's my dad. She seems to think it's not him. I told her if we show it to them and it is him, not only will we be embarrassed, but they would be mad at her for snooping. She was like, "Why do you care? I'm the one who did the snooping, so only I'll get in trouble. I'll cover you if they try to get mad at you." I told her there has to be a more sensitive way of approaching the situation, instead of just bombarding our parents with, "Hey, we saw your sex tape," which could either be with you or mom's secret lover, and we should consider the fallout. However, she seems pretty adamant that she just wants to show them. She thinks it's the safest option, since if she was cheating, she gets exposed, but if it was just dad, then no harm done. We can't agree on what to do, and I have a feeling she might show it to them regardless of what I feel, but if I push hard enough I might convince her of an alternative solution. Any ideas on what we should do? Relevant comments. OP comes up with plans. Option A, sending it anonymously. I like the idea of sending it to him anonymously, maybe through email or something. If it's him, no harm done, and he doesn't know it was us. Comment 1, please don't do that. Your parents will be shitting themselves wondering what kind of pervert hacker has gone through their computer to watch their private videos. Comment 2, but if it is him, and you send it anonymously, he'll be freaking out about who has it and how they found it. Option B, telling dad about the video. If it's him in it, he'll know it's him, and won't he get mad at us for even looking at it? Is there a way I can let him know that I'm sorry I had to look at it, but it's only because we were concerned about him, so he doesn't get mad? Option C, faking finding it in front of dad. OP's response. Okay, what if we go up to him and tell him there's something we need to show him on the laptop, and then while browsing it in front of him we pretend to stumble on the thing for the first time? We can be like, "What is this?" If he genuinely doesn't know and says open it to find out, it means he doesn't know about it. If he's like, "No, don't click that," it means he knows. Comment 1, dude, if you use one of the plans you've put in this thread or confront him with it, please post an update. This is gold. I can't wait until your dad A, gets an anonymous email with his sex tape and thinks he's being blackmailed. B, finds out you have been watching him do the nasty with mom and is crazy embarrassed. Or C, and my favorite option, you pretend to mistakenly find it while showing him something else and the whole family watches mom and dad's sex tape. Cheating women don't keep videos on the family laptop of them stripping and cheating. And if your mom turns out to be the dumbest cheater ever, then all of this will expose itself soon enough, but she's not, so it won't. But I just want to see the cringe update, so I'm still rooting for C. OP's response. No, here's what my sister and I decided to do. We're going to sit mom and dad down, tell them both, at the same time, that while we were using their laptop, we noticed there was a lot of junk and we were cleaning it up to make it run faster. In the process, we accidentally stumbled on this file, and mistakenly opened without knowing what it was, but closed as soon as we realized. We won't tell them we watched the whole thing, and we won't tell them we suspect cheating. We'll say that the reason we're telling them this is because we think they should save the file in a more secure location, or maybe on a separate hard drive or something, so it doesn't get hacked into. If my dad knows about the tape, he'll be like, "Okay, that makes sense." If he doesn't know about the tape, well, now he would. Update. Things didn't go so well, unfortunately. I kept arguing with my sister. I told her if she's so certain they're cheating, the least we could do is ask dad first if he knows about the tape but not mention that we've seen it. She was determined that it was cheating, based on the hands and the feet. She was like, "Those definitely aren't dad's." I told her she was creepy as fuck, if that was them in the video, and God knows how many times she's watched it. She was basically watching a video of our mother naked and fucking our dad's dick. Even if it wasn't our dad's dick, it's still fucking gross. She didn't care. I told her if I couldn't stop her, she should at least leave me out of it. I want nothing to do with it. She went nuclear. She went and told them everything, and embarrassed the fuck out of herself. Turned out her little detective work was way off. It was Dad in the video. Our dad was angry but mostly bewildered, but he just laughed it off and got over it. Our mom, however, didn't take it so well. She had a panic attack. She went nuts. She was like, "What the hell is wrong with you kids?" I tried to stay out of it, but my sister dragged me into it and named me as her accomplice even though I had warned her against it. Our mom was so hurt and upset, not only that her daughter would so brazenly accuse her of cheating, but that her children had watched an explicit sex tape of her. She was really traumatized. She couldn't take it anymore. She got up and left to her parents' house where she's been there for a whole day to recuperate. She only called our dad to speak to. She won't speak to us. Our dad told us to just give it time until she's feeling better. Now on to the second story. I, 36, set up two of my friends, 36F and 36M. I found out today he has been catfishing me as his partner on her phone to check up on our friendship. I have a childhood friend, Emily, I've known since we were 5. We originally met because our respective fathers were both German and living in the UK, having married British women. They became friends and we were basically raised as siblings. Nothing remotely romantic has ever happened between us. It's accurate to say I treat her like I do my other sisters. People struggle at times to believe nothing has happened between us, but is it so insane for someone with 3 sisters to treat a childhood friend as a 4th? We stopped being friends briefly when she got married way too young to her boss. He ended up being incredibly abusive, controlling her life at every level, and over the 3 years they were together he basically isolated her from all friends and family. We reconciled when she divorced him. Around this time I attended university and met my now wife early on. We were assigned to the same floor in halls. We've been together for 17 years now and she's become really close to Emily over the years. Also at university I met a guy, George, on my course. We were part of the same friendship group but didn't stay in touch until we coincidentally ended up working together a good 10 years after graduation. I ended up introducing him to Emily and they started a relationship. A year or so later they moved in together. Emily was happy, he was happy. On the face of things he's seemingly been fine with me and Emily's friendship and never said anything. Over the past few weeks I started getting texts from her, sometimes late at night, that were just off. I was suspicious when she used a common British shortening of my full name rather than the traditional German version our respective fathers, and she would always use, and when some overtly flirty, almost outright sexting, occurred I immediately shut it down, 100% sure it wasn't her. I basically called him out and asked if this was in fact George using her phone and bluntly asked why he was trying to sext with me as his girlfriend. He never responded, but after explaining the situation to my wife she went over to Emily's with my phone to see what was going on. I wasn't there for this, but she showed Emily our entire text history and what he had done. George came home and they confronted him. He first outright denied it and had the balls to accuse Emily of sexting me and trying to hide said cheating from my wife by saying he did it. Emily just left with my wife to come stay with us after this because there wasn't any reasoning with him. The morning after he called and begged her to come home, he was crying and threw himself at her feet claiming he did it out of jealousy. He highlighted that she was in the habit of deleting our conversations, which drove him mad, an apparent choice she makes for all her texts with everyone, not just me, and he was always jealous of our relationship. He found it hard to see me with her, and after he saw her saying stuff like how she loved me, again, siblings, not being able to read our texts drove him to basically go fishing to establish our relationship. The sexting was an attempt to bluntly see if it was something we, or more specifically I, would engage in. At this point Emily asked for mine and my wife's opinion on this whole thing. I called bullshit on this being a mistake. Something he was driven to by jealousy. He violated her privacy by going through her phone, risked our friendship by masquerading as her. Risked my marriage by trying to bait me into sexting a friend. Risked Emily and my wife's friendship by making it look like Emily was sexting me. The entire thing was a clusterfuck. I didn't outright say she should leave him, but I highlighted how dishonest this whole thing was. She eventually went back home and I didn't hear anything for a few days, but Emily eventually revealed to my wife that she had functionally forgiven him. My wife worked out from the conversation what had happened. He had basically flipped the script on me by playing into fears from her marriage. He described me as another controlling male trying to dictate who she had a relationship with. He encouraged her to make her own decision, not bad advice in theory, but she had to ignore me because I didn't have her best interest at heart. I was controlling her like her ex. My wife quietly pointed out he was in fact being like her ex, not me. He was driving a wedge between her and family. At this point Emily just gave up. Said she couldn't win, couldn't decide between the man she loves and her brother, so fuck it. Let's pretend it never happened. We haven't really spoken since. Apparently part of forgetting this ever happened is also giving into his worries about our friendship. Every time I try and bring up what he did, I've either been ignored or told to stay out of it. Honestly, this pisses me off that he's gotten exactly what he wanted. He's stopped us talking. I know I can't force her to break up with him, but it's seemingly a catch-22. I can't push her to make a decision about what he did whilst he's got her convinced I'm controlling her. I rarely see George at work and he's rightly kept the fuck away from me. I was tempted to bring my sisters into this clusterfuck, tell them what happened, they love her like a sister too, and see if they can talk some sense into Emily, but that's somewhat manipulative too. So any advice here? Let shitty sleeping dogs lie. Try and get her to deal with what he did rather than sweeping it under the rug? Update: so, I followed the general advice of just leaving the entire situation alone. I agree any interference from me or my family would be manipulative and controlling, albeit well-meaning. So, I haven't really spoken to Emily since slightly before Christmas, but her mother contacted me a little after New Year to ask if I knew what was going on with her. Emily's cousin back in Germany had contacted her mother saying she had turned up on her doorstep having flown in from the UK on the 4th after apparently breaking up with George. According to her mother, Emily had come back to our hometown for the holidays. She brought George and at some point they ran into her ex-husband at the pub. For context, we grew up in a tiny village in the arse end of nowhere. There's literally nothing to our village but a pub, a post office and small supermarket. Her ex still lives where we grew up. So this is all information relayed to me via Emily's mother, but apparently at some point George approached Emily's ex-husband and asked for some advice. George is familiar with the story of their relationship and know how controlling he was, and why they divorced. Somewhat to her ex-husband's credit, he apparently refused to answer any questions and quietly approached Emily's mother to relay what he had asked. Now this is according to him, and George denies it, but he said George asked him how to handle me in terms of my friendship with Emily. I've no idea what Emily's ex-husband's motivation was here, but they've been divorced for a decade now and he hasn't contacted her in this time, so I'm inclined to believe it wasn't further attempts at interfering with her life. Maybe it was actually manipulation, maybe in the decade since they've divorced he's become a better man. Who knows? We're all inclined to believe that is what was asked, despite George denying it, because how else would her ex-husband know he had an issue with me recently? He isn't in contact with anyone who would know about the recent issues. Also, to be honest, the ex never had an issue with me. He saw me as a child, despite being the same age as his then wife, and constantly called me kiddo and asked how school was. It would be a very specific shot in the dark on his part to assume George had an issue with me without George saying so himself. So, her mother told Emily what George had tried to do and pointed out that her boyfriend is now trying to emulate her ex-husband's behavior and encouraged her to confront him over this and also what happened over the last month rather than ignoring it. Nobody was privy to the discussion they had, but he left sometime after it to return to their shared home and she stayed with her mother, saying they had broken up. She stayed with her mother until the day after, where she, without any warning, left for Germany. The cousin she's staying with assures us she's relatively fine. She's just overwhelmed and embarrassed she let this happen again. She couldn't handle being where she might run into either ex, so staying with her mother was off table and she just ran somewhere far, but safe. I still haven't spoken to Emily. I've sent her a message with some condolences and reassurance she will always have a home here in the UK. I've decided to continue to give her space whilst making it clear I am there for her. She hasn't responded, but I assume this is just out of awkwardness over what happened and how technically George was once my friend. He hasn't spoken to me either and I haven't seen him at work at all. So, not a happy ending per se. It shouldn't have taken her abusive ex getting involved for a resolution, but as people predicted, George was being abusive and he would repeat that behavior. I suppose it was relatively painless that he showed his true colors so emphatically without much further abuse. This could have dragged on. Thanks for the advice. Me staying out of it didn't make this any easier for her, but it probably avoided making it worse. Update 2: given this whole thing has now been entirely sorted in the 3 months since it happened, I thought I'd give an actual full resolution. So, Emily came back to the UK just before the country was locked down and moved in with us, reluctantly. We grabbed some beers, and played Divinity 2, whilst we hashed out exactly what went down from her perspective. I apologized for going behind her back and speaking to her mother about it all. Situations like this are never helped by information being relayed through other people, and I asked if she wanted to go through it all start to finish. Basically, she buried her head in the sand the day she found out he had been trying to sext me as her. It was just too much. She couldn't win, she either lost the man she loved, and the lifestyle she had, or lost her brother. I assured her she'd never lose me, but she revealed she low-key hated the fact she let herself be taken advantage of like this twice and couldn't face me having not listened to my advice. She also mentioned that breaking up with him would inevitably land her on my doorstep for support, and that made her feel bad also, hence escaping to Germany and not talking to me about this. This went deeper and she opened up about her insecurities, how she regretted never going to university, instead marrying her abusive ex-husband, and how she feels like an accessory to other people's happiness. She saw me and my wife, a power couple, as she put it, and just felt so small by comparison. She did love George, but leaving him would leave her with functionally nothing again, and she couldn't handle that. We talked about this a lot. I revealed I aware my support of her could be a problem. I was feeling like I had made their relationship awkward by being so involved in her life. It might have been hard for George feeling like her boyfriend, whilst I was there picking up her tabs, doing the DIY and basically acting like a father coddling his child. I asked if my, with retrospection, financial support of her tied into this feeling of inadequacy, like I was dragging her along for my ride, and she said it was a problem. She felt trapped when the relationship ended because she had no independence or true control. Whilst I would never use my position to control her, she would still be living by someone else's good graces. She felt she needed to stand on her own 2 feet, be her own woman rather than relying on a man, no matter how much she loved and trusted him. That way her decisions would be her own, rather than under some level of duress. In the same way a child wants independence from her parents, she feels she finally needs independence from me. So we came up with a game plan. Now the lockdown has obviously made this harder. She is still living with me and my wife currently, but the plan is she's going to go back into education. She was capable of attending university, had the qualifications, but decided not to due to marriage. My financial security was really born of an inheritance I had after my father died, life insurance. I used to not have to worry about rent during my extended time in education and early career. I bought a small flat with it I still own. I've decided to pay it forward and put her in a similar situation by letting her use my flat, which is currently unoccupied because it's only been rented to students due to its proximity to 2 universities. Yes, this is me financially supporting her, but in a strictly limited way. No more covering errand bills, paying for holidays or footing the bill when we socialize. She will not pay rent, but she will cover all bills on the flat, and she moves out the moment she's in work. She didn't love the idea of me owning her home, but I called it my last act as that guy in her life, the pseudo-brother father sugar daddy best friend. After this we'll just be independent siblings best friends. She will be moving soon, we'll need her room after all since my wife is now 5 months pregnant. Turns out she's been pregnant since late December and all this started. As for George, he swears up and down he never asked the ex-husband to handle me. He claims he asked how to be fine with me. It wasn't seeking advice how to deal with me. It was seeking advice how to be fine with me the way her ex-husband was. Could be true, who knows? It's irrelevant ultimately. Though we recently found out George moved a girlfriend into the house him and Emily used to share, and here's the kicker. It's a long-time friend. Emily is fairly certain he never cheated on her, but she out loud laughed when she found out he's romantically living together with a long-time friend 3 months after the breakup. The dude's insecurity was likely born of his own feelings for a friend. He was getting close with a girl he was friends with, so he projected that onto me and Emily. Edit, just to clarify because this paints a picture I don't intend. I don't pay all of Emily's bills, nor for her stuff and holidays. She doesn't want independence from me specifically, she wants independence full stop. She went from her parents, to her now ex-husband's, and then spent about a decade living paycheck to paycheck before meeting George and living largely off his money. She has no real qualifications and her current line of work has limited prospects. The things I do for her come in 2 categories, and the lack of clarity between the one-offs and the consistent things made it look like I pay for her entire world. Firstly, there's the trivial stuff I do consistently that I'm stopping as a massive overreaction to George. Logically it's fine that a brother and his wife do these things for his sister, but they weirdly make her uncomfortable, and it obviously made her ex uncomfortable. Stuff like I've done the odd bit of DIY, specifically fixing a vacuum, which isn't insane given I work in R&D for a vacuum brand, and I pay for her drinks and stuff if we socialize. I'm stopping all that trivial levels of support largely at her request to ease her discomfort at being subsidized by me. It's a pride thing. This might also help with any jealous boyfriends wrongly assuming because I pay for her cinema ticket along with my wife we're secretly Mormon. The second category were the big, one-off, things like paying that bill or buying plane tickets. Things I did in a crisis and/or out of extreme generosity once. She wants to be able to be safe during shit like COVID without needing to live with me. She wants to be able to break up with a guy and be okay alone rather than crashing here. She wants to be able to fuck up a meter reading on her electricity and weather the silly bill that comes without me paying it. That happened once. I'm not gonna stop doing these things entirely. An emergency is an emergency. We won't let her come to any harm, but instead we're gonna try and make it that she doesn't need me to do these things via an education and hopefully a better job. So, I don't pay for her entire life, I just muddled some big things I've done in an emergency in with some trivial brotherly support. One of my work colleagues is a lifelong friend of mine. We lived on the same street growing up, went to the same school, and when I needed a job after graduating university, she made me aware of an opening at the company she worked at. I applied, got the job, and it's been quite a few years since and we still work together. It's a pretty small company, and quite male-dominated, so after we started working together we became really close. We take all our lunches together, we regularly stop by each other's desks for a chat, and we quickly became known round the office as inseparable. A year ago she got engaged to her long-term partner, and I was ecstatic for her. She had a really tough time a couple of years ago, 2 family deaths close together, and I did everything I could to be a good friend to her while she was in the worst stages of grieving. She cried with me daily for weeks and I made sure she knew I was always available to listen. I also took about a third of her workload off her voluntarily, so she could take days off when she needed to without stressing about her work building up. So now that life has gotten better for her and she's always smiling and excited, it's really nice to see. Ever since she got engaged, as expected, she's talked a lot about wedding plans, especially at our lunches. I know basically every detail. When she booked her venue she was really excited, but she refused to tell me where it was going to be, saying that she wanted it to be a surprise when the invitations came out. The wedding is 2 weeks away now, and I've long since stopped waiting for my invitation to show up. I know when they were sent because she told me all about delivering them, and shows me every day the gifts people have started to buy off their registry. I feel silly for saying it, but the more I think about it, the more hurt I feel that I haven't been included. It's a big wedding, and she has invited some other people from work that I didn't know she was even close to. She hasn't mentioned the reason why I'm not invited, and at this point I feel too awkward to ask. I guess it's just a slap in the face because I really thought we were close, and now I'm realizing that maybe we're not. The trouble is, since all this I've started to really examine our friendship, and I'm wondering if she even cares about me at all. I can think of 100 examples of where I've helped her work through decisions, listened to her vent, stood up for her when she's had issues with colleagues etc. Even tons of little things, like if anyone brings in cake and she's out of the office I always save her a slice so she doesn't miss out. But I can't remember a time that she did anything for me in return. Now when she talks to me, I've realized she doesn't even listen to me. When I'm finished talking she just carries on with what she was saying before, almost as if I'd never spoken at all. If we're ever talking about me or something I've been doing, she never has anything to say. She just kind of nods and then switches the conversation back to herself. I'm starting to think she couldn't care less about me, she just likes having someone around who she can talk at, and whoever that person is doesn't really matter to her. I've invested so many years into this friendship, it's really cut me deep. I feel used. It's also made being at work incredibly lonely, because she was my only friend. I've stopped having lunch with her and any time she tries to chat I politely bring the conversation to a quick end and go back to work. She doesn't appear to have even noticed. I do still wish her well, I'm still glad for her that life has turned around and she's so happy, but I'm a bit lost. I'm not sure if I'm being too harsh because I'm hurt, or if I even have the right to feel hurt in the first place, as I know weddings have a finite number of guests and you have to leave people out that you would invite in an ideal world. But I'm not sure there's any way back from this either. Has anyone else had a similar experience? Am I being unreasonable or overdramatic? Should I just let the dust settle and see how I feel then? Edit 1. Just to clarify things that have been asked a lot or requested to be put in an edit. 1. She hand-delivered the invites to other people at work so I know it hasn't been lost in the post. 2. I haven't asked her about it because I'm a total doormat and scared of difficult conversations. And 3. I invited her to my wedding, but that was years ago so it's possible she thinks things have changed since then. Edit 2. This has got a lot more attention than I expected, and my first ever gold from a kind stranger, thank you. I have read every single comment, thank you all so much for taking the time to give me advice. You have given me a lot to think about. Opinion seems to be divided over whether or not I should confront the wedding invitation issue or just let it go. I am definitely going to make sure that it isn't a mistake, but as for getting an explanation why she didn't invite me, I'm undecided. I'm going to have a think about that and the best way to proceed, but your thoughts have all been really helpful. In terms of our friendship in general, I'm not going to be too hasty to write it off. I'm going to try and put my feelings aside and see if I'm right about it being one-sided. If it is, then I will have learned a good life lesson, and if I see it as worth saving, then I'll have to deal with it the best way I can. It does seem the bigger issue here is my non-confrontational approach to my relationships. Some of your comments were hard to read, but only because I know you're right and this is something I have to change. I've withdrawn from friendships before because they've hurt me and I've felt unable to say anything, and that's not really fair. It's a general problem I have with uncomfortable conversations. Whenever I have to have them, I basically descend into a panic, my mouth goes dry, I shake and I can't find the right words to say. If it's a bad enough problem that I can't ask a good friend a simple question, then I can't ignore it anymore and I need to work on this. Thank you for pointing this out to me as a real problem. I'm going to find a way to get better at it. I will post an update of what happens. Thank you again. Update. So it took me a few days to decide the best way to approach this, but yesterday I had lunch with her again and had the conversation. I started by saying, "So you've sent all your invitations out now, haven't you?" She looked immediately panicked by my question and I knew right away that she didn't want me to go down this road. When she said she had sent them all, I asked if that meant she could show me her venue now. She showed me the website of it, including the photo gallery, and talked me through all about where everything was going to happen, all the flowers and decorations she was going to add, etc. It's a nice enough country hotel with some pretty gardens, but I'm not sure what all the secrecy was for. I probed a little more, asking who she's invited from work. The list didn't include me, said I was looking forward to seeing the photos so I could see how everything looked. She didn't correct me that I would see it on the day, and then I was completely sure that my lack of invitation wasn't an accident. She looked so relieved when I switched subject and asked if she's excited about her honeymoon and having a rest from all the wedding stress. So I'm definitely not invited. I thought it over carefully and I have decided not to ask why, for 3 reasons. The reason is already fairly obvious. She clearly doesn't think we're anything more than colleagues and I've misread the situation. There were some other theories suggested, e.g. jealous husband to be, associating me with her past grief, but considering everything I know about her and our history, I'm sure it's not that. I'm not sure why she didn't cool it on the wedding talk with someone she had no intention of inviting, or even just bring it up with me and explain why I'm not invited, but never mind. Having an awkward relationship at work is the last thing I want. I'm worried that if I push this and turn it into an issue, that I'll look pathetic and needy, or it will just be unprofessional. I also run the risk of her badmouthing me to colleagues and mutual friends, and I will find it much easier and less messy to handle my own feelings quietly. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience for her, and I don't want to be the source of drama that dampens her spirits at all. I'd rather just let her enjoy her wedding, make good memories and not bring her down. And you know, I'm fine with not going. It was never really about getting invited to a wedding, it was more having to face the fact that I'd been naive and taken for granted, and I felt silly that I'd invested way too much in this relationship. That's not all on her, because she was never obligated to be my friend. Talking it through on my previous post actually really helped me work through my feelings. When I went back to work on Monday, I felt much calmer and more detached from it emotionally. I have looked back on our whole relationship and honestly, she's always been self-involved, entitled, and narcissistic. Being a bride has just made it more obvious, but it's always been there. She's also never given back to me, besides helping me get my job, which of course I'm grateful for, in that she's never been willing to talk me through any problems I've had, and although I help her happily with her work, she says no if I ask her for help in return. She has a few office enemies, and even though I saw her negative traits that caused her to be disliked by some people, I overlooked them and defended her anyway. Now I have put a little distance there. It's quite apparent that she's not a very nice person, and I'm genuinely okay with just moving on. She hasn't really noticed the distance between us so far, or she has noticed and doesn't care, is relieved that I'm giving her space, so I intend to just continue with doing that. If she eventually asks why, or I get the sense that she's trying to rekindle our friendship, then it will be time to clear the air with how I've been feeling. If she doesn't and we just continue drifting, then that's probably for the best. It's sad to lose a friend, and it will probably take me some time to get over it and to become comfortable with the change in our relationship, but I have other genuine friendships, and plenty of colleagues who are lovely people who I can get to know better now. The main thing I really took from my original post, and I'm so glad I did post because I needed some tough love on this, is that my fear of confrontation really needs dealing with. If I can learn how to better speak my mind as things are happening, that will stop things from building and building until I have to have a serious conversation and it makes what should have been a molehill into a mountain. I also need to figure out how to have difficult conversations without having an anxiety attack, which not only weakens my message but is extremely distressing and puts me off dealing with things and being honest with people. I had a couple of books on assertiveness recommended to me, so I've bought them to start me off. I'm also looking into going to a coach, or maybe a couple of therapy sessions at least, to try and better myself. I don't want to hurt other people by doing this, so this has become top priority for me. Thank you so much everyone who pointed that out to me. I was aware of it but I didn't think it was a problem and figured I'd just be that way all my life. Now I know better. Thank you for being so honest with me. Also thank you to those who talked me through the one-sided friendship issue. I'm a good listener and have always attracted people who need to vent, but I only ever noticed the one-off conversations, and didn't think I was being taken advantage of as a long-term listening ear. I have been examining my other friendships in the last few days, to see if anyone else is using me in the same way, or if I've even been doing this to others and not had the self-awareness to realize. There are a couple of changes I need to make, including a friendship that I need to set some boundaries in, and another one where I've not been giving back to the other person as much I should have. I have learned a really valuable lesson from this about maintaining healthy relationships, and I'm very grateful for that. Edit. A few people have been asking about the books I was recommended. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. When I Say No I Feel Guilty by Manuel J. Smith. Why Men Love Bitches by Sherry Argov. It's been over 4 years since I posted my original story. I have received occasional messages since asking for an update, but I didn't expect to post one. However, I've had a flurry of messages, so let me tell you what has happened since. The colleague and I still work together. In the time that has passed, she has had 2 kids and took 12 months off for each, so she hasn't actually been around a lot. At first I avoided her. Looking back I was being petty and giving her the silent treatment. I was hurt, and I wanted to hurt her back. Not my finest hour, but the joke was on me as I don't think she even noticed. But then 2020 happened and we were working from home, then she went on maternity leave, and by the time we were back together in the same office it had all been long forgotten. At this point in time we are friendly. I genuinely hold no grudges, but I understand what our relationship is now. I don't overextend myself, and I don't expect anything more from her than chit-chat. In the meantime, the company has grown a lot, and I have a good group of work friends. We go out for lunch, go to the pub on Fridays, and sometimes hang out on weekends. I have always had some wonderful friends, but now I have a bunch more, and these ones I get to see 5 days a week. One of the people in this group got married 4 months ago. Not only was I invited to her wedding, but also her bachelorette, party. I was on the photographer's list for an official photo with her, along with the other work friends she invited, and after a few drinks she gave me a big kiss and said she was so pleased I was there. Another one of them is recently engaged, and although her wedding is a while away, I have already been informally invited, without having to ask. And my colleague has another work friend that she leans on now. When things upset her at work, I'm no longer the person she comes to for a rant or a cry. I'm totally fine with that, because it was an emotional drain. As for me being a doormat, I have grown a lot as a person since then. For a start, you really do just care less as you get older. Hitting 30 did wonders for my self-esteem and inner peace. Secondly, I have grown in confidence. I used to be terrified of letting anyone down, so I overcompensated. It took time for me to realize I am actually a really good friend. The more people I meet who like me just as I am, the safer I feel being authentically me. With this growth in confidence, I started using my voice a bit more, firstly just with little things. When nothing bad happened it got easier. I could speak freely without being afraid of losing friends. There's been no major drama, but I believe if there was I could handle it much better. Take care of yourselves. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to connect with each other in the comments below. My husband and I got married 3 years ago. When I was a teenager I was told that due to medical complications I may never be able to have children, but after 2 years of trying infertility treatments I'm now halfway through my pregnancy with our miracle baby. Unfortunately, because of some complications I had to cut back on my hours at work. It's very physical. My husband offered to pick up more hours to compensate, so he has been working a lot more in the past 2 months and coming home later. I couldn't see that anything was amiss. Things were the same as they've always been. He always brings home flowers, food, things for the baby, coffee. He's always sending me thoughtful and loving texts through the day. The gaps where he was unreachable were explainable. But this morning he sat me down and gave me news that rocked me. He told me he's been having an affair for the past 6 weeks and that his affair partner just found out that she's pregnant. He says that if she decides to keep the baby she's going to raise it by herself and that they mutually agreed to end the relationship already. He wants to make things right. I don't know how things can ever be right again. He just wants to move on from what he is calling his transgression. How do I ever forgive him? How do you deal with the unthinkable? How do I learn to live with the idea that my child's sibling might be out there somewhere someday? Most importantly, how do I learn to move on like he wants me to? Edit, I have an OB appointment for unrelated medical reasons tomorrow at which I will make sure to request extensive testing. I have plans to meet with a lawyer on Monday. I'm talking to my sister to see if I can stay with her. My relationships with much of my family are fractious, but I have a pretty positive relationship with her. I will not be seeking other options other than having my baby due to being pretty far along and having been told in the past I would not conceive. Regardless of what my husband has done, I love my child. Edit 2, I saw my OB on Friday and will hopefully have some test results, fingers crossed for all negative, within the next few days. I will meet the lawyer tomorrow and go from there. My sister advised me to stay in the house that my husband and I co-own until I talk to a lawyer. This has been such an emotionally harrowing time for me. He's acting like everything is normal. All I want to do is sleep. I keep telling myself it'll be over soon. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be okay having a baby with a man who just abandoned one. OP's response, I keep coming back to this. It sounds like she's on the fence about the pregnancy, which is ultimately 100% her choice, but the ease with which he's willing to take the stance of just forgetting the whole thing happened is hard for me. I'm more than halfway through my pregnancy, 23 weeks, so I'm in a different position. Comment 2, was thinking the exact thing. I'm not getting that he has any fear of losing you. Why? Either he thinks you're easy to control, or not that bright, or desperate to stay his wife. Which is it? Why isn't he begging you to stay with him? Why does he feel you'll just go along with forgetting that he's cheated on you? OP's response, I think he knows that my initial reaction was going to be that yes, we could fix this, or that I would agree to make things right. I think that he knows that I have so much invested, emotionally, in this relationship. He is my first real love, my first everything really, and that I'm more likely to fight for what we have than to give it up. Even I'm surprised at how conflicted I feel. Update, where to begin? First off, the other woman decided to terminate her pregnancy, which was confirmed to me by her. Talking to her was really weird and didn't answer a lot of questions that I had for her. This is a person who knows me and has met me a number of times, and I just don't get it. The motivations on both sides don't make any sense to me, and I don't know if they ever will. It helped to learn there was no romantic feelings, but it was still confusing. Especially since I perceive my husband and I to have a healthy sex life, as often as 4 to 6 times per week, and I don't really get what's fun or exciting about leaving the boundaries of your marriage. We are in therapy, separately and together. Going separately is helping me to sort out a lot of my own feelings, but I think that going together is essential one way or another as well. He has been cooperative and participatory in therapy. I'm hopeful that we can figure at least some things out. We've had a lot of conversations about why it won't be easy for me to just forgive this and why I need answers and changes in behavior, and I do feel like I've been heard. Divorce is not completely off the table, but it's a hard situation to be in, especially in a vulnerable state like being pregnant. I've consulted with a lawyer and made my parameters clear to him, but for right now I want to try to work things out. I know this isn't the update that a lot of people probably hoped for, but for me I think this is the right choice. Thank you all for your words of encouragement, advice, and perspective. I definitely took a lot of things to heart and will remember them for a long time. It's very appreciated. Edit, I want to make it clear since people seem confused, divorce is not off the table. What is off the table right now is trying to make a decision that will affect my life greatly when I'm already in an extremely vulnerable mental position without making an attempt at healing both on my own and with him. Even if we end up divorced in the end, allowing myself time means that things have a higher chance of being amiable and easier for all of us, especially our child. Update 6 months ago, my life was the best it has ever been. My husband and I had just found out that we were pregnant after IVF. Our relationship seemed happy and strong as it ever has. Just absolutely on top of the world. I found out he'd had an affair in mid-October where his AP had gotten pregnant as well. The AP terminated the pregnancy and I was prepared to work through things with him, even just to end up divorcing amicably. Then I found out that shortly before we got married he'd had another affair that I never found out about previous. I was devastated beyond devastation. He said some things to me that I will never forget or be able to forgive. I went into preterm labor at 26 weeks, which they were able to stop, but after 4 weeks I'm still having a lot of complications and I may have to deliver the baby early. My husband has been nasty and uncooperative since we fought. He hasn't come to see me in the hospital even once in 4 weeks. My life was incredible before all of this, before I knew about all of this. I wish I could go back to that. New update: I had been leaving little updates in this post, but I thought I would, finally, do one big update post in its own post. I think I'm finally getting better. I'm still sad. I still hurt. There are things that will take a really long time to get over. But in the time I've spent away from him I've come to value my freedom and myself as a person. He didn't come to see me in the hospital even once. He hasn't come to see our baby even once. We had a big fight shortly before I went into the hospital, over his infidelity, and if he didn't want to see me that's his business, but not coming to see the baby we fought so hard for is something else entirely. But it was a sign for me that I can do this. We can do this. I can do better for my daughter and for myself. I have a lawyer now and I'm moving forward with divorce proceedings. I know I will be okay, I don't have to rely on him for anything. I'm sad about how all of this happened. I wish it didn't happen. But I also know now that I can have a whole life beyond this, you know? Also, our baby was born a little more than 6 weeks early and is 10 days old now. She is still in the NICU, just getting a little bit stronger, but she's doing amazing and should be home by the end of this month. I can't wait to really start enjoying motherhood. Final comment: it's weird that his personality changed so completely in such a short time, or was he always a selfish aholi, and you somehow didn't see the red flags? Anyway, congrats on your baby, I wish you all the best. OP's response: in retrospect, there were signs. But the thing is that we had a giant fight after I found out about the second, actually first, affair, and when that happened, it was like something snapped. He said things to me I don't want to repeat and I could never forgive as long as I live. And when I didn't fold, he decided to punish me with this silent treatment, ignoring me, whatever this is. I lived out our entire marriage as an exceptionally passive person. Gentle, endlessly forgiving, go with the flow. When I started to stand up for myself, the cracks started to show. But there were never problems before because I never made problems. On to the next story. This story also comes with an update. It's important to note that I'm 34F, a lesbian who isn't completely out, but I'm not completely in the closet either. I'm out when I'm with my close circle of friends. No, I don't live in a conservative area, it's just a personal thing and I have my reasons for keeping it this way at the moment. So I work with a guy, 31M. We've worked together for roughly 6 months. We aren't close, but I'd say we're work buddies. We don't follow each other on any socials, but we do chit-chat here and there at work about insignificant stuff. Our political views align, so that's mostly what we talk about when we do talk. Last week we were walking out of the building together at the end of shift and he asked me if I was single. We'd never really asked each other anything that personal before, so I was taken aback a bit. I've had plenty of men in my life hit on me and usually it's no big deal to let them know I'm not interested, but I've been single for almost a year now and I'll admit my relationship status is kind of a sensitive thing at the moment. I told him something along the lines of, sorry but I'm not interested. He stopped me and said he wasn't asking for himself. I was just trying to get to my car and leave work and I felt really annoyed at this point. I told him I wasn't going to hook up with his friend and I'd appreciate it if he just left me alone. He stepped back and asked me, what's your problem? I told him if his friend was anything like him then I really have zero interest. As I walked away he said, no wonder you're single. When I told all this to my roommate bestie, they told me my reaction was extreme and that I was the AH in the scenario. I felt he was out of line and doubled down. The following day I told our manager what happened and that the whole event made me uncomfortable. The manager had a coach and counsel talk with my coworker. That was yesterday. My coworker has been radio silent with me ever since. I expected he'd apologize, but nothing. The manager and I are friends outside of work. She knows I'm gay. When I asked her how the talk went, she told me I should have heard him out. I was confused and asked what she meant. Turns out he wanted to set me up with his sister. How did he know I was gay? He told our manager it was the Xena Warrior Princess screensaver on my desktop and his gaydar from growing up with two lesbian sisters. She knows this employee somewhat well and gave me his sister's name and said to check her out on Instagram. She's a 10. Walks that fine line between butch and femme perfectly and looks very liberal like myself. Now I feel bad because not only did I miss out on possibly meeting someone, but I was beginning to think I was indeed the AH and he just caught me at a bad time. I've always had issues interacting with men. The next day I planned on apologizing, but he put in a shift change request and got moved to second shift. I have his phone number, but I've been blocked. So, Reddit. Was I the AH here? Edit 1, I've accepted I'm a huge AH. The only way I know how to reach him is through work email. I sent him a message apologizing and asked if we could talk. Second edit, coworker had no interest in talking. I reached out to his sister on Instagram regardless. We've been chatting. I got her digits. She has no idea who I am and says she doesn't talk to her family much about her love life. So I'm gonna see where it goes and cross that blown up bridge somehow when I get to it. We've been talking non-stop since I hit her up, so I think I'm in. Update: the sister and I started talking quite a bit after I reached out to her. I didn't tell her who I was. After a few days it became pretty clear I'd fucked up massively. There was genuine chemistry between us. She wanted to meet in person. I was getting the feels. She was getting the feels. I had to come clean. I told her who I was. I told her what had happened between her brother and me. It didn't go well. She said she needed space. She blocked me. Maybe she'll unblock me, maybe she won't. Her brother did send me a text saying he appreciated me being honest with her despite being pissed I reached out to her. I apologized to him again. I told my manager I was out of line with my coworker and wanted my complaint retracted. All in all, I got what was coming to me. I'm working on being a better person. I honestly don't know how it even got to that point or why I acted so crazy. Hopefully I can make amends with both of them in the future. Top comment on the update: all I can say is OP needs to leave the family alone. Very shady to go after the sister behind the brother's back after what she did. Good for sister for blocking her. OP responds: I am leaving them alone and backing off. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to connect with each other in the comments below. I was born in China, but my parents and I moved to the West when I was little, so I was raised mostly Westerner, but my parents still managed to teach me many Chinese traditions, including food, and I sometimes still cook what they cook. So, I have been with my boyfriend for about 3 years and he lives with me at my place. This Christmas, his family, mom, dad, sister, and nephew, came to visit him from his birth country, Spain, for the first time in years. I was excited because I never had a chance to meet them in person. They arrived a few days before Christmas. He went to pick them up at the airport while I was working, so when I came home they were already there. The meeting didn't go as well as I would wish, because the little nephew, as soon as he saw me, started doing the eye-stretching thing. He was immediately reprimanded by his mom and grandparents, but the following days he made a lot of racist jokes in Spanish like, "What do you call someone who doesn't take a shower?" in Chinese. Xin shan piu, without shampoo, and he was barely reprimanded for that. Besides that, Christmas went great, and the next day we woke up very late. The nephew started saying that he wanted Chinese food for lunch, so my BF's parents asked me if I could make it. I said sure, I was glad to do it. I cooked something my parents would do in a special occasion like these, and served the table in a very traditional way, with chopsticks and everything. Then I called everybody to the table, and instantly saw their disappointed faces. The nephew said, "What's this?" To which I said, "Chinese food." He grunted and said, "No is not," and started to throw a fit. His mom calmed him down. Then BF's parents told me, "This isn't what we were expecting." I asked, "What did you expect?" And they replied, "You know, something like what they serve at restaurants." I tried to explain to them that this is something actual Chinese people eat, but wouldn't listen. They dressed up and went outside to eat at a restaurant. My BF stayed at home, but then called me stupid. He said, "You knew exactly what they meant by Chinese food. I'm trying to make you look good in front of them, but you're not helping me by playing dumb." I asked him to explain himself better but just shouted, "When people say Chinese food the last thing they expect is white rice, get a fing clue," and locked himself in our bedroom. Since that incident, they started to speak to me as a toddler, over-explaining everything they asked me to do, and stopped correcting the nephew's racist behavior. I tried to tell my BF to tell them to stop, but he said, "This is your making, now they think you're brainless." This continued till they left yesterday. My BF and I now barely talk, and I wonder if it's really my fault and I should have known better. Update 1. Hi, it's me, I'm alive. I'm sorry for disappearing for so long. A lot has happened in the last weeks. Sorry if I'm not very detailed, I'm very tired today. For those who already know my story, my boyfriend allowed his family to be racist to me. After his family left, I tried to break up with him, but he wouldn't let me end the relationship. I tried talking to him, but he would say something along the lines of, "I'm not breaking up with you." I talked to my family about it, they were furious at him and I had their support, especially my father. I'm so glad that they were by my side. I went to my place with my father to confront my boyfriend and break up once and for all. He didn't take it well, shouted that I can't break up with him and he won't end the relationship. That's where my dad intervened and they started fighting, like fist fighting. My dad ended up being hurt, but he also landed some punches on my boyfriend. I was horrified, crying, screaming, and with no idea of what to do. My BF then grabbed me, got my purse and took me out. My dad followed me. My keys and phone were in the purse, so I couldn't go back in. He locked himself and we started hearing him breaking stuffs. Then Dad called the police. They arrived like half an hour later. During that entire time he did hear him breaking stuffs. When the cops finally arrived, tried to talk to him but wouldn't respond, so they broke the door and after another fight they arrested him. I walked in my place with another cop and my dad and everything was destroyed. Everything he could break was broken, from glasses to plates to mirrors to holes in the walls, every TV, my computer, my phone, coffee maker, etc. Dad pressed charges immediately. I was terrified, and I'm still terrified. We had a trial and he is in jail now, but I think he might be deported to Spain, I'm not sure. I'm still in therapy and still living with my parents. Some of my stuffs were repaid, but I'm still not ready to come back home. Sometimes I still wake up crying in the middle of the night. I don't know if I regret standing up for myself, or if I will be able to trust people in the future. I might die alone without a husband or children and that makes me sad. I had suicidal thoughts, but I find things that make me want to stay alive. I don't know when will I feel good for real, but progress has been made. Oh, and my ex-BF's family are still trying to reach me to insult me and make me feel even worse for sending him to jail. I block them but always find yet another phone number to call me from or a temporary mail address. If you are reading this, thank you. Final update: I'm alive. Hi, I hope you remember me. I just wanted to stay in touch a bit. I'm doing kinda okay. Except for the self-deletion attempt I had. I'll tell you a bit about it. I kept going to therapy, and there I realized my relationship with my ex was way worse than I realized. I'm stupid for ignoring all the red flags on him. Turns out our sex life wasn't as consensual. I never really liked sex, always found it gross and hurtful, but he had a higher sex drive, and when he wanted to do it my opinion was irrelevant. I thought it was consensual because I just let it happen without truly fighting against it. I thought I just had to do what he wanted because that's how relationships worked, right? If I didn't please him enough, he would just go and have it with another girl, right? Except he gave me an STD, so he was messing around with other women anyway. At least is not AIDS and is curable, but still, knowing I sacrificed myself so much for him to gain nothing and get an STD sucks so much. I felt so broken, unlovable, and worthless. That's when I tried to end my life, but my parents saved me. I was in the hospital for some days. For the first time in my life I hated my parents for saving me, but when I went back home, I just hugged them and begged for their forgiveness, but my dad said there was nothing to forgive. My mom sometimes sleeps with me, and we cuddle together. It's kinda shameful to feel like a little child because of it, but I feel loved. My ex is being deported. I had to see him a few more times at the court until I just couldn't anymore, and now a final verdict was given. He will be out of this country soon. His family has stopped the harassment too. My current coping mechanism is watching Asian dramas and crying while seeing the cute relationships they have that I probably won't. I'm writing this as some desperate attention-seeking attempt. Through my previous posts I got so much support that I didn't think I deserved, but now I appreciate those kind words a lot more, and I would like some more. I sound pathetic, but I don't care anymore. I swear I'm getting better. Thank you all. Now on to the next story, which also comes with an update. My wife and I, both 40, have been together for 15 years. The past 3 years were turbulent and we fought all the time until about a year ago when we decided we needed a time apart or to separate. We chose the first option. The first period we went no contact at all, but then we started texting, then meeting for lunch, etc., dates. We talked about the problems. I felt miserable without her, and I hoped she did too, because I missed her every day. The problems that we always fought about, the mundane stuff, were so trivial now, and we talked about how our issues were really non-issues. She said she loved and missed me so much, and I felt so much relief that she felt the same way, so I confessed that I was miserable without her and how our problems were nothing compared to not being with her. We made a plan to reconcile, and a month ago she moved back home. Before we separated, we discussed what we are allowed to do during our separation. She said that she didn't want to sleep with others, but that I was free to do it because we will be legit separated and she doesn't have a right to decide over me while we aren't a couple. I slept twice with a colleague of mine. It wasn't good and I regretted it, so I ended it. It basically wasn't worth it. When my wife moved back, she asked me if I did something. She didn't. I told her the truth and she was silent for a while and then said that it was fair enough and not cheating because we already discussed the possibility. Since we have talked about it, she has been distant. She says that she is happy and that she missed home, and I too missed her, and I haven't been this happy, but I don't know. When I ask her, she says she's fine and not to worry. But I don't know. I have caught her crying a few times, but she says it is the news and the world's condition. My wife is wild in bed and I usually don't need to do much to put her in the mood. Now she doesn't react to my touch, and sometimes we try for a long time, but she says she can't and starts crying. I don't know how to solve this. I don't know if I'm imagining things, but even a hug or a kiss, I felt her going rigid in my arms, but she insists it's nothing and just that she isn't in the mood or tired. I miss her warmth. Relevant comments. Comment 1. What if your wife slept with other people? OP's response. The thing is, that's why I discussed this subject with her before we separated. I was terrified that she would sleep with other people because I know my wife to be the kind that wants an emotional connection before getting physically attracted. I had nightmares about it, so I needed to ask to see what we were expected to do during the separation. I don't need any emotional connection to sleep with others. I regret it, but I told myself that we have agreed to this. I feel that I have cheated seeing her reaction now, no matter if we had agreed on this or not. Comment 2. Did you always have feelings for your coworker? I didn't. We were working together one day and I started telling her about my separation and she listened. I felt good that someone listened to me. I never even thought about it until we started chatting and talking about our problems, and she suggested that we could sleep together. It wasn't great because I love my wife and I felt like I was using my colleague. Comment 3. So the sex wasn't good with the coworker, so you decided to end it? OP's response. I didn't mean the sex wasn't good. The whole thing wasn't good because it wasn't what I wanted. Comment 4. It wasn't technically cheating, but he killed the relationship. Just because it's voluntary manslaughter and not premeditated murder doesn't make it any less dead. Mini update. Thank you everyone for listening. I have tried to speak to my wife this evening. I asked her for a walk. She is not fine with what happened. She started crying immediately when I tried talking to her. She said that she didn't know if she ever will forget or forgive. What surprised me is that she seemed to put the blame on herself. She said it was all her fault because she started this whole separation idea and then agreed to me sleeping with others, like she tricked me somehow, and now she wasn't fine with what she agreed upon. She apologized and said that she knew she was being unfair, but that she couldn't help how she felt now. I tried to explain that it wasn't her fault at all, but I'm not sure she is convinced because she keeps saying that it was all her fault and that she is being unfair. I don't know what to do. I can't see her broken like this. Update 2. She said that she couldn't do this anymore and she apologized because she believes that it was all her doing because she felt like she tricked me and gave me permission that she then couldn't keep, and now everything is ruined because of her and that I had all the reasons to hate her. But I don't hate her. I hate myself very much, but I would never hate her. She is the love of my life and I regret everything, including the break and the small stupid stuff that made us fight and take that break. She moved into a hotel. We decided to wait about telling our families until after the holidays because our broken hearts are enough, we don't need to break their hearts too. I just don't know what to do. I have lost everything. This is my update for you who asked. I'm sure you will find it satisfactory given the amount of hate you've given me on my original post. And that is the end of the story. That's it guys, this is where I will leave you. I hope you enjoyed the stories I had for you. I certainly enjoyed them. Please be sure to drop a like or a comment, and it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe to the channel, but no pressure. Until next time, be kind, be curious, and I will see you. Corner Stories signing off.